All right, I'm going to pray and get us started. Father God, we thank you that we are still hanging with you, and we're more than a third of the way through your word and getting close to halfway. And we just ask you to keep giving us the prompting each morning or each day to do our reading. We thank you that we've got our group on Saturday morning that we can all discuss what we're doing and grow together in you. And we just be with us this morning as we do just that. Give us fellowship and understanding of your word. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. We're into Job, and I think I sent you guys text messages this week that kind of expressed a little bit of my opinion. Job is difficult in a way, but it's good. And if you understand who it is that's talking and why they're talking, it is very valuable, and it's a very important piece of scripture. And there have been lots of books written about why bad things happen to good people. And I think that's probably a common question that most people have when they are considering who God is. And a lot of people say, if there was really a God, why would he let all this bad stuff happen? And that's the theme of the book of Job. And on my timeline here, you see I've got question marks over there because there is some, it doesn't say when it's written, and there's a lot of questions about it. If you heard the discussion on the Bible Discovery TV program this week about it, it's generally accepted that it might have been written a lot later than what the setting is, that it might have been I'm trying to think of the word, a teaching story that was passed down through the ages. And so there's some question about exactly when it was written, but the time period seems to be maybe during the same time Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, somewhere in that period, that it seems to be back in that time. So we were all the way to the end of the Old Testament over here, and now we're going back toward the beginning. And this week we'll finish up Job over here, and we'll start into Psalms, which David wrote a bunch of those. So that's going to get into 1100 BC. So we're going to skip a bunch of years here on Thursday or Wednesday or whenever we get started on Psalms. So that's where we are time-wise. We're probably back in the time of Abraham, but it might have been written somewhere over in this area. And that's why it's counted in the wisdom literature, and the wisdom literature goes back to like just before 1000 BC. Likely was written during that time, but had been passed down as an older story from the ages. And I've got another one of these Chuck Swindoll timelines, which I really like because he splits things out. And when I drew my red box on there, I thought this first part was a summary of the whole book. And when I looked at it again this morning, I see that that's a summary of chapters 1 and 2. So that is part of our reading. That the first part of it is, it's got to divide it into scenes like a play. The first part is just talking about how good Job was. Then we get into Satan's proposition to test Job, and God gave him permission to do it. And then he did those things, and Job was demonstrating what we often hear as the patience of Job. There are many colloquialisms in modern language that come from this book, and that's one of them. The whole theme of the book is the patience of Job. And the second or the fourth part of these first two chapters is Satan's persistence and still trying to attack Job, even though he survived and was still praising God and saying, what was that famous line, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. After all that stuff everything had been taken away, including his 10 kids. And he's going through poverty and plagues at the end of that, and Satan keeps attacking. Then we get into chapter 3, where Job curses his birth, and that's one of our readings that we'll talk about. And in the next bunch of chapters are these friends of Job that come in and are really critical of him. And that was kind of the point of the text I sent earlier this week, is to be careful as you're reading through this to pay attention to who's talking. Because these guys that are giving him advice, generally they may be taking or saying things that would be scriptural, but they're taken way out of context, and they're wrong in almost everything they say. And Job continues to respond to each one of them in a patient way. Job is that's the nature of the guy. In our first reading on last Saturday, was Job was basically cursing his own birth and his own life. And our question about that, it wasn't really exactly related, was more in a question about what was in the Bible guide, and gets back to what I was talking about earlier about when the setting was. What was the evidence of Job being written around the time of the patriarchs? And that, like I said, that's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There were no personal sacrifice, or excuse me, they were offering personal sacrifices. As we get into the law, after Moses, the sacrifices were offered by the priests. There was no centralized worship mentioned in Job anywhere. And they measured his wealth by livestock, which seems to be probably from a time before they had the land given to them. And there was no reference to Israel or the tribes of Israel. This little picture I got, I don't know if any of you ever watched the first Mission Impossible movie, but Job 3:14 was a cryptic clue in that movie to find out who the bad guy was they were after. Job, I wrote down here what verse that is. It says, with kings and counselors of the earth who built ruins for themselves, and it went on to talk about what they did. But I think he was after an arms dealer or something like that. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that came up in a secular movie. As you know, people mispronounce Job all the time, and that was part of what was going on in that movie. He couldn't figure out what Job 3:14 was until he finally said, he looked at the Bible and thought, well, I better look up and see what Job 3:14 said. And that gave him a clue to find out who the bad guy was. Anybody, I didn't ask for discussion on any of that. Anybody have any thoughts? Anybody else want to say anything besides me?
I'm listening.
I just struggled to follow who's speaking.
It is hard. It really is hard.
I went through most of all of Job. I got up to, I think I went through all of it listening to it on the audio, Bible.is. And so I'm going through it again.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you're listening to it, they don't have the little subtitles that are inserted. And I'm looking at my printed NIV Bible over here, and even the one, I think the ones I use for when I translate between Spanish and English has subheadings on them that will tell you who's talking.
But what they do to prompt you is they have a different voice. Like,
okay.
I got to chuckle a little bit because when Satan's speaking, it's like something out of Hollywood. It's like you got to listen to it.
They have a lot of reverb on it or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, come on, I can't even understand what he's saying.
Hey, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Send me the tape.
Hey, just go to Bible.is, man. It's kind of, but anyway, they use different voices, so the person's changing.
Well, that sort of prompts you, but they don't tell you who they are unless you listen at the beginning, right?
Right. I look at the words, on and off, but it's easy to. I study the lazy way. I lay in bed or lay on the sofa and let it play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's value in listening and reading. I'm on this is the 14th trip. On the 13 times I've been through, there have been times where probably all the way through was just listening like you're talking about. And I've used that Bible.is probably on maybe two of those trips.
Yeah.
Right now I'm using something different. It's called the Blue Letter Bible, I think is what it's called. But it's got a whole bunch. You can pick out whatever translation you want. And I think I use the New King James, and you can show two of them side by side. And I have the New King James, and then I have a Spanish version that I'll have it read to me in English, and then while I'm reading in Spanish, and then the next chapter I'll do it the other way. And I'm still not learning Spanish very well. But I have found, I went back and played, one day I was kind of dozing off, so I thought I'm going to play something I haven't listened to for a while and see if I can understand what they're saying when I wasn't reading it. So I played something from Numbers. There's a Shema, Paul, that you like so much. I went back to, what is that, number 6, I think it is, and played that in Spanish while I was dozing off. And I realized that I understood most of the words, vocabulary wise, but I couldn't put the words together and make thoughts out of them. I understood as they said each word, I could understand what most of the words were, but I couldn't even make a sentence out of any of them. I couldn't, in my mind, it wasn't translating into any complete thoughts. It was just each word. So I've learned vocabulary, but I haven't learned, I couldn't carry on a conversation at all. And that's probably the listening part. I need to do more studying and reading. And
you might spend a month in a Spanish-speaking environment.
Yeah. Sean Johnson, he's a Mormon, and he went to somewhere in South America, I think, on his mission journey. They require them to go on missions, and he was immersed in it. And he's fluent in Spanish because he was immersed in it. I think they do 2-year missions. And
wow, I know that.
Do you know, Paul? Is it a 2-year mission they do?
Yeah, usually it's a 2-year.
Yeah, so he was somewhere in South America, immersed in that. So he knows Spanish real well. He may not know the Lord properly, but he knows Spanish. All right. I didn't talk about what we were just looking at. I need to go back. We got off. The discussions are real good. That's part of why we're here. Anyway, we're on Sunday's reading. I guess this is the second day, and this was Job answering these guys that were giving him a hard time. But he was talking about that the terrors of God were arrayed against him, and that he said, "Oh, that I might have my requests, that God would grant me the thing that I long for, that it would please God to crush me, that He would loose His hand and cut me off." So he was getting pretty depressed by this time. And what does Job request from God? He asked him to crush him, to cut him off. And what do you think he was feeling? Anybody? Just think about this. If you were in that situation, and you've lost everything, and you got your friends that are giving you a hard time because they say you're the one that sinned that brought this on, which we see that same thought in the New Testament. In the apostles, they asked Jesus when I think there was a lame man, they asked him who sinned, him or his parents. And Jesus answered that it didn't have anything to do with sin. And that's sort of what Job is facing here, that these guys are giving him a hard time and saying this has all happened to him because he sinned, because of his own behavior. And it's what, I mean, any thoughts on that from you guys before we talk about that further?
I can certainly understand how he was at the end of his rope, and he's ready to let it be done with him. So I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, his words were showing, I've got this over here, extreme depression is what his words were showing, but he kept his faith. He was depressed, but he kept his faith. And he interpreted it, the terrors of God were against him. He didn't realize that it was an attack of Satan, and that God allowed it. And his friends just, from what I see, they just piled on. It's almost like they were on Satan's side. They were trying to trying to make him cave in. And this Uz thing is something that I don't think we have a whole lot of history on where Uz is. That was where this was supposed to be happening. This particular site sort of placed it maybe over here, and this is that part of the Red Sea that you remember we talked back when they crossed the Red Sea, the place where there's evidence of chariot wheels and stuff in the coral growth. That's that branch of the Red Sea right there. The Suez Canal is up here. This is a branch of the Red Sea and has a name, but I can't remember what it is. And you know, some folks think Uz might have been in that area, and other folks put it over here more toward where Syria and Damascus is now, or up that direction, northern Jordan and over into Iraq or somewhere in there. There's no definitive area where Uz is. I was just kind of curious. You know, the promised land where Abraham was at the time, and Isaac and Jacob, is over here. So it's either a little bit south of them or a little bit east of them. Okay. Any more questions or thoughts about that? All right. Chapter on Monday's reading in chapter 10. Job is more, you know, he's continuing to lament on how bad things are going. Won't get into any of the detail in there. The question we had wasn't directly related to the reading. It was more, well, how do you see the same sentiments in our church today? And I wrote here that I don't have that. I don't have any tendency to get depressed. So I have a hard time recognizing that, or maybe it's that I don't accept it in other people. I think that's probably more because my mother than anything else. That's the same way she was. She just wouldn't accept anybody being depressed, and I kind of am that way too. So I struggle with empathy, and that's something that I constantly have to work on.
Hey,
Yeah.
we can talk about that at a later time. I'm an expert at it. Unfortunately,
It's
I'm
just,
with you.
it's there's a strong body chemistry relationship along the other environmental factors and what have you. So there's a lot to it. Trust me.
environmental factor. So you're saying that it's not just,
That's a factor. That's not.
well, it's not just how you, it's a combination of all kinds of things.
Let me give you one simple example. I've lived other than 5 years. I lived all my life where I live. Okay, in this area. And when I was in the throes of acute depression, I got lost coming home from work one day. So I'll leave it at that. That's how severe my brain was not working.
Yeah.
So that's not. I can't explain that other than that. My brain was malfunctioning, buddy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Nick, my brain does too.
And I haven't told anybody that other than maybe my wife and daughter, but I'm sharing that now. So now's the time. So
Yeah.
I hope you do have empathy. The thing is, the key is that you don't stay if you don't stay that way. So people that give up and do themselves in, it's sad because it's not forever.
Right.
It's a temporary condition, just like if you break an arm, it can heal, and so does that. But it's truly it's an epidemic in this country. I don't know about the world, and a lot of people don't have empathy for it. So I'm glad you don't suffer with it. You're blessed.
Wait a minute.
we want to say something, Greg?
I probably suffer with it.
Well, that's certainly understandable. I've been faced just in the last few days. I don't know if any of you know what Kim has started doing, but she's been studying for months on presenting parenting classes to the kind of people that we've begun to experience with the foster kid system. That oftentimes foster parents are required by the court to, they're supposed to go through training to learn how to be parents. So Kim has taken on that ministry, and she's prepared for it for months and started it 2 weeks ago. And she's had 2 meetings, and the first one was one court appointed woman who had lost custody of her children and wanted to get her children back. So she's forced into this. And the first meeting they had, apparently this young woman was so impressed that she brought 2 more women from her drug recovery, or addiction recovery class that were in the same situation, that aren't court appointed, but were apparently what the women told Kim was that this young lady was so overwhelmed by what she learned that she was telling everybody in her drug treatment class about it, or drug addiction and recovery class, and that these 2 women decided they wanted to join with her. So last night when I picked up, and Kim, I mean, Paul, I want to talk to you about this a little bit further. Part of what we're wanting to do is, and she's doing this completely and blatantly from a Christian perspective. And we realize that we're going to be bringing in people that may not have any kind of spiritual connections. And we're wanting to do that. And these folks are so far from your norm, your standard norm of what most people accept. We've got tattoos and piercings and earrings and blue and pink and purple hair and things like that.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Guess what? That is the norm now.
Well, yeah, but it's
right.
It's the problem we're facing is it's not really the norm in churches, and
yet,
yeah, well, that's something we talked about, Greg. That Foes church that y'all have gone to, you still go to that church?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Is that the kind of church it is? Don't they focus on that kind of people?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Do you see that in that church? Do you see people that look to us 60-year-old folks
Right.
look weird? They don't look the same, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that church focuses on.
Right.
Yeah. That's kind of the impression we had.
Can you put that back over?
Right.
So, I think what we're probably going to do, we prayed about this, we've been praying about it each day, is that we may start them off in introduction, because they're hungry for the Lord. They really are. And Kim is getting that impression that they are interested in turning their life around. And we thought maybe she's got an introductory Bible study that's kind of focused on that kind of person. And we may just start doing a Bible study. And she's been trying to tell me I need to be involved in this thing. and doing a Bible study, I can see where I would be involved. But last night when I picked up Chris and Jaden at their dad, they're having some marital problems. And I had a long talk with him. I took them out to Wendy's, where they wanted to go for supper last night. So I took him with us and we had a long talk. And I told him that what Kim was doing, they were there, that what Kim was doing is more focused on parenting, but that it would also could apply to just relationships. And I invited them to join us. So, we may be going that way. That I may be getting involved in Kim's ministry, and then maybe if we get these folks into a more stable relationship with the Lord from their own perspective, then we might try to plug them into some churches. And maybe that's what we're here in Carroll County for. We've been trying to figure that out. I mean, I've talked to you, Paul, that we're not necessarily a round peg in a round hole at your church. And it's kind of the same way over at Family Worship Center, that we're a square peg in a round hole over there. We don't fit into either place.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't come out here to start another church. I certainly don't want to do that. But I need to, and I've told Paul, I'm trying to connect with different churches around so that we have connections with different churches. So when we find people like this, that we can plug them in. So Paul, I'm talking with you more than I am anybody else right now. That, you know, that's something I see coming up, that, you know, we're connecting with people that may otherwise not walk into a church and wouldn't fit in with the normal look of most churches. And that's, so we got to figure out what we're going to do about that. So I probably said more than what Kim wanted me to say, that she's got confidentiality issues with what she does. Certainly no names involved other than Chris and Jaden's dad. And he probably wouldn't mind that a group is talking about him. Anyway, Job's response. I already talked about that. I don't have that kind of thoughts most of the time, but I'm moving into that world. So how do we careful when speak? How must we be careful of? How must we be careful of when speaking to other believers? What must we be careful of? Oh, okay. I was reading the wrong word there. And I mean, that's what I never have had a problem with too, is not to speak depression and doubt into the lives of others. Personally, I try to encourage everybody. Just like Nick, when that text message that text discussion we were having the other day, after it was over, I asked you if you were having a bad day. And apparently you were having a struggle with one of your reports you were working on.
Yeah, it was taking me way too long, but the good side of it was it was an unusual scope, broader than most, and so I went to the client for a higher budget, and I got that approved. Yay!
Well, is that the one you sent me the email on last night? That I was included on the email about something about it. Are you anticipating it's going to come to me to review?
Yeah, I included it when I sent it in for review. I included you and Jeff, thinking possibly one of you two may be asked to review it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you said, yeah. I said it's going to take you probably at least 2 hours. You said probably 5 hours for me.
Yeah. I tend to
just to let you know, my time has already consumed the budget I even got approved. So.
Well, I take too long on all my reviews.
Well, this one's it's you'll see.
Okay.
If you get it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah. You just turned that in late yesterday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, getting away from talking shop. All right. Anybody more discussions on any of that?
No, you just would, by careful speaking with others, like, right. You certainly, if someone's depressed or having doubt or struggling, you certainly want to keep a positive attitude. But the worst thing you can say is, well, you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, you know. Well, that works in some situations, you know.
Yeah, that's always been my fallback.
A clinically depressed person, they're not able to, you know, for whatever reasons are, and it's a slow process. But like I said, even if left untreated by professionals, over about a 2-year period, 2 to 3 years, but you will pass out of it. You know, the point is that never give up. Always never give up hope.
Well, so many people do end their life when they're in that situation.
Hey, suicide is an epidemic too in this
Yeah,
country,
yeah,
especially
right.
with veterans. Especially with veterans. But it really is sad that that's what some people see. They see no light to come out of. But trust me, it can render you non-functional. So a lot of people, it's just a chronic thing, you know. And I believe there's a tendency, just like alcoholism has a tendency, and familial tendency, DNA, whatever, genetics, they're tendencies. You know, it's alcoholism it runs in my wife's family.
My wife's family too.
And probably, I won't say clinical depression, but I have a lot of family that's on antidepressant medication. But not, you know, because there's other benefits than just depression. So it's a real thing, you know, but you can live with it. You can live with it and move forward, and it's not a forever thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Anxiety is a whole nother thing, but that plays a part of it too.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's good to talk. Good discussion.
Yeah.
All right. Now Job is getting expressing more of his troubles. It's like he didn't even want to be born. And we won't get into all the details in there, but that's more of Job talking about his despair as he was going through all this. When you read about Job's struggles, what emotions does it evoke inside of you? And I think that's just what I was talking about: sympathy, Kim, and then faith. And Kim tells me I need to have empathy, which is different than sympathy. And I have had some struggles in my life. I went through 4 years of dealing with a false accusation that was involved in court and all kinds of things. So I've been there for a while. And like you said, Nick, you get through it. So I guess I have some empathy, something to base that on, something to go back and look at and understand why the folks may feel the way they do. And Nick, you may have a better ability to be empathetic. And I think, Paul, that comes with your profession. I'm sure you have training in doing that. And it's something that you have to do on a regular basis because people will come to you.
I was asked to talk to my congregation, and when I got up the courage to do it, I did. I put it together, and it's actually recorded somewhere on the internet. So
yeah,
I have to find out and share that with you. And if you want to listen to it, you know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Where were we? Does it seem just? You know, I'm having a non-empathetic response there. I said just has nothing to do with it. Fair is where they give blue ribbons to pigs. It just, to me, the justice wasn't there. It was because he was under an attack from Satan, and there's nothing just about being under an attack from Satan. There's not going to be anything that's reasonable when you're in that kind of situation. And yes, it absolutely causes anxiety. But you know, if you read something like this and read the whole Bible like we're doing, you know the end of the story, and you know the end of this particular story. So you know that having hindsight on something is 20/20, but during it, it certainly raises anxiety, and that's what you've been talking about, Nick. And I'm sure it does, and that distorts the way you think, just like you said. And what I was thinking about when you were describing that, getting lost on the way home, if you've ever noticed, you know, you might be driving along in your car and you get a call on your cell phone, and even if you've got it integrated with your speaker system in your car, you feel like you're not distracted. You're driving along having this conversation, and if you have the conversation for more than 10 or 15 minutes, you get off the phone and then you think, where am I? And you may have even passed up the exits that you should have got off on, that you
been there, done that.
Yeah, it happens to me, you know, and it seems like every time I get on a conversation when I'm driving, I have to really look and consider where I am, because you don't pay attention. Even though you're driving and you're not running into people and you're staying on the road, you're not necessarily realizing where you're going. So that's kind of a picture of exactly that.
I passed up to the the lower speed limit sign too, which led to a nice hefty ticket.
Yeah, I guess that's another danger.
That's right.
Which, you know, they give you tickets for being distracted, and I think I can see
Sorry.
why.
Yeah, it wasn't a distraction ticket. It was like, hi, officer. He goes, you know how fast you're going? I said, yep, 70. That was the speed limit. He goes, no, it changed back there to 55 at such and such place. I went, and I'm thinking, that's when I was on the damn phone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that leads us into the next question. Why do these emotions rise up, and what promises must we hold on to from the Lord? And I didn't include a whole lot of scripture because it's like, to me, the whole Bible is that way. He promises eternal life in His Son, and that trumps everything. And
Yes.
that's my thoughts on it. Anybody else?
Well, say, Jim, I was just looking at, I got checked 14, verse 14. In verse, do you want to read it or anything?
Go ahead and read it. Are you in verse, what chapter?
Chapter 14 in Job. And then 14.
14.
Yeah. If a man dies, will he live again? I put yes there.
Well, you know, that's part of Job's. I think in the next one of the upcoming questions, that's part of our discussion. Is exactly that.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean that's good. I mean, you caught that on your own, but that's exactly the whole point. It's. I mean, that's a good question, a good comment there, Greg. Because that's kind of the point of the whole book. Bildad the Shuhite, the shortest man in the Bible. He
I
goes.
had to read that twice before I got the joke there.
Actually, Jim, there's somebody shorter than him.
Who's that?
One of the soldiers who slept on their watch.
Okay, I didn't catch that one. Those were the ones on the Garden of the Tomb, right?
Right.
Yeah, they were shorter than him. Maybe they had a real big watch. Oh, okay. So Bildad the Shuhite says he's talking about all these things that happen when you die, and he's talking to Job. It's almost like he's trying to scare him and telling him how bad things are going to be when he dies, and how can fear sometimes be good? I mean, fear can prompt you into action and sometimes save lives. You hear stories about that all the time. I just read one this morning. That school shooting they had in Idaho, I guess just a couple of days ago, you heard about that, where some 6th grade girl pulled out a gun and started shooting up a school. And the teacher that disarmed her, I was reading about, her dad told this story, that said she was a tough cookie. And what happened was that the teacher, she was an 8th grade teacher, and she heard the gunshots and cleared her room and got everybody out of the building. And then she went out in the hall, and one of the boys that had been shot was laying on the floor. And she went over and was trying to help him, and she saw blood all over the place and looked up, and the girl was across the hall holding the gun. So she told the boy, everything's going to be all right. You stay right here and be quiet. And she got up and calmly walked across the hall and, talking to the girl, telling her things are going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And she went over and put her arm around her and kind of slid her hand down her arm to where the gun was. And when she got to where the gun was, the girl let go of the gun. And she took the gun and just hugged her until the police got there. And,
Wow.
And her dad said that she was terrified while she was doing it, but she went over and took the gun away from the girl and did it calmly. And and there's stories like that all the time. I mean, you hear about mothers picking up cars off of their kids and things like that or wives picking up cars off their husbands when they're working on the car, things like that. That fear can be a tremendous motivator. And, I guess maybe even though Bildad the Shuhite was not being nice about it, that he might have been motivating Job. He tried to convince him he was going to die in a really violent way and God was going to do it. So why was that misplaced? Because it wasn't God that was doing it. It was Satan. And God ended up being Job was under God's protection, that he wasn't really going to be destroyed himself, even though all these things around him went bad and his kids were killed, which is a bad thing. He ended up being blessed in the end. Anything else? Kim's in there dealing with the boys doing breakfast. I don't know if y'all are hearing that noise. All right, we're on Thursday, and this is Eliphaz a Temanite. I guess he's a lot like a mosquito bite. And he was telling Job how wicked he was and how these bad things he'd done. He'd stripped people naked. He'd taken their clothes. He'd taken pledges for no reason. That means he was collecting collateral, taking their property from them for no reason. And he wouldn't give people water, and he withheld bread from the hungry. So this Eliphaz was being really hard on Job, and of course it was all made up anyway. I would assume. I think it's kind of the way the theme of the criticism is gone. But I mean, it just talked about, highlighted what the answer to that question, what he was accusing Job of. But why did he ask him those questions?
He's again, he's trying to find where he did wrong or sinned, I guess.
Well, Kim's running the ice maker in the other room, so I didn't hear what you said. She's still running. Give me a minute. I'm gonna ask you to say it again. All right, what now?
Yeah, I'm just saying he's making assumptions that he did these things which are, were wrong. He wasn't dealing justly with other people, so God was dealing unjustly with him.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. He's being punished for his sin. And he's assuming, being real judgmental, that he had those sins. And I think they may have been, it's possible these guys might have been a little jealous of Job before, because he was blessed in every way. And then everything comes crashing down around him, and they may have just assumed he had some hidden sins they didn't know about. They just assumed it. But Job was under an attack from Satan, and it wasn't from God at all. All right. I think it's our last day, yesterday's. And Job answered all these people and started his, I think we're getting away from the criticism, and Job's going to get into a discussion with God in the next few chapters as we go into the next few days. But he's talking about how the man has no power compared to God. That God is almighty, omnipotent, and is the one who's in charge of everything. Job is expressing that to these critical friends around him.
Just a minute, I gotta go. They do that and they're setting up playing cards until we get there.
All right, Kim's got a women's conference thing she's doing. She's leaving right now, so good thing we're almost done, because I'm going to have the boys on my own here in a minute. She says they're in there playing cards or something. I'm not sure.
Coffee or something.
Let's see. What does Job learn about God through his suffering and pain, as seen in what we just read? And yeah, it kind of said it. He learns that God's knowledge and power are much greater than ours, and there's really not any way we can compare to that. And we have only a glimpse of what that is. And what are some things you've learned about God when you face trials in your life? He's always faithful. It's like you said, Nick, when you're going through those times when you feel like you're abandoned and alone, that he's always there in the end. And you said that it goes away. And I think that you can go back to relying on God, and you can rely on God while you're going through there. And that's going through the bad times. And that's where you can gain strength and probably make it a little bit quicker to get to the end. And he's there even if we stray and are reluctant to turn to his ways. And that's where I was. When I went through my trouble, I strayed away from God. I did that. And there was a 3 or 4 year period where I was completely in the world and doing things on my own and my own strength, and my own strength was hard to, I found it quite difficult to deal with on my own, even though I think I'm real strong. There were times where I was beat down pretty bad, and God was there in the end. So, anybody else?
I just wanted to say, when I was going through my issue, and was, feeling like my anxiety was just off the chart, and I felt like I was jumping out of my skin, and I was trying to relax, and I was laying in bed, and I was by myself, and it's the only time I've ever experienced, people say God speaks to them or in some form or fashion. It's the only time I literally heard an audible voice just say, relax. And it was like, I instantly was at ease. I've never experienced anything like that in my life before or since. I can't explain it. So it's certainly something spiritual in my mind.
Yeah. That's profound. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's
yeah. Again, I don't tell everybody this, but when the time's right.
Yeah.
I've shared it in a small, group, study group, one time, when the question was, has God ever spoken to you? Have you ever heard or seen or had visions or anything? And I said, well, that's the only thing I've ever experienced. And I said, it was certainly, it was phenomenal for me.
Yeah, that's really good, Nick. I don't know what I want to say here.
It's okay. You don't have to say it.
I appreciate you opening up that way.
Thanks.
Let's say it that way. Okay. Well, Kim's walking out the door, and I've got 2 little boys I need to go take care of and interact with and do some things. So, Nick, since you've been doing some good talking today, you want to pray us out today?
Ooh, boy, that's one of the things I've always liked to play.
Well, here you need practice. You need to learn. You need to practice.
Yeah.
Why don't you do
I'm gonna
that?
take my hat off.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got family over here. My sister's visiting, and I see their luggage packed up, so I must be heading out today.
You need to
All
get
right,
going too. Then.
I'll give it a shot. Almighty Father, we give you thanks for this time to study your word. I give thanks to Jim Skees for leading the group. And there's an opportunity to share some of my own personal experiences. I hope that people will find more empathy when they come across people who are suffering. It certainly has made me more empathetic. And so I just give thanks and hope that I can stay faithful with the study and keep my commitment to complete this with the rest of the group. So in your word, in your son Jesus, I give thanks. And amen. And have everyone have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nick. Amen.
Hey,
All right. I'm going to cut us. I'm going
Thanks,
to cut us
Nick.
off here.
See you,
Good luck,
Michael.
Jim, with
Greg.
the boys.
All right.
Take care, guys.
See y'all later.
Bro.
Bye.
Set line.
Bye, y'all.
Bro.